All right, what is up, everybody? Today is Friday, December 10th. I thought it was the 11th for the longest time, but it's the 10th. We're back at it with you again, Matt, DJ. How you doing? You look great, man. I know we were gonna wear ties. I like the look. You can unbutton the top one if you want. I don't know. Hey, you know what? I like the look, so whatever. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. A little disappointed we didn't make the playoff, but
yeah, we'll get into all that, and we have a month to break down these playoffs. So I'm kind of thinking we should maybe wait on the big games until maybe we can start previewing them next week. But we'll talk about it all. Obviously, the whole selection committee and everything about that, and then the seeding was I thought very funny that they came out afterwards and were like, "Oh, well, that was the only thing we could do with Alabama and Georgia. It had nothing to do with them replaying." I mean, I know it does somewhat make sense, but 100% once the final four teams were set, they were like, okay, we need to find a reason not to have these guys play back to back. And I'm not going to get too much into it, but whatever, because I think we're going to end up seeing it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But that's good to know, Matt. We're a little late today, but it is actually better. I'm more awake than I was at 1 o'clock, or noon. But hopefully Matt does not have COVID. We hope. So keep us updated.
I feel good, so.
Well, I'll say you feel good until you end up on the ventilator. So hopefully not. So, Matthew, how you doing, man? It's got to be a little different from you in Florida. Today it reached 40, and I'm wearing shorts around the house in my apartment, and it's great. So, but I don't know how it is.
That must be nice. We're down here enjoying our 85-degree December in South Florida. I made the mistake of wearing pants. I was sweating the whole time I was walking over here, but I'm doing good. Besides that, doing real good.
Yeah, I'm. You guys have never seen me. I'm really short. I'm only 5'7". I say I'm 5'7", probably 5'6.5". But I always wear pants. In the winter, or if I'm in public, I always wear pants because for whatever reason, my mind just thinks that in shorts, I look shorter. So I always wear pants, and I always just profusely sweat in the summer. So it's probably good I'm not in the South all the time. But that is just unfair that you have 85-degree weather and I'm sitting here. And it's not even a nice winter snow or even a fall because there's no leaves. It's just dark already. It's gross. But that's all right. Lots to talk about. Obviously, we have our Final Four playoff teams. Alabama number 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincinnati 4. I think we'll obviously get to the rankings, but I believe Notre Dame finished 5, and then Oklahoma State finished 6th.
I think Ohio State was 6, wasn't it?
I think it was Oklahoma State because I almost think they made a point of not putting Ohio State on there. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But yes, Notre Dame misses out. I don't know. How'd you feel about it?
I mean, I wasn't that surprised. I mean, I was surprised at the way Bama beat Georgia, but I wasn't that surprised that they did beat Georgia. I mean, it just sucks because you get that Baylor upset early in the day, you get your hopes up, and then just your world gets shattered that same night. So,
yeah, I forget that we I do the other podcast and everything. I forgot we haven't talked about last weekend at all, and we haven't talked since last week. So we should probably talk about last weekend in the games. Yes, the SEC was crazy, but I want to start with the Baylor one. I was watching it. I don't know how that guy didn't score. I have no idea how that guy didn't score. That was a superhuman play by that defender, or just when he got the ball, I was like, oh, this is easy. He's going to walk in, and they chased him down, and I thought for sure he was going to get something on the pylon or something like that. Just like the Michael Penix stuff with Penn State last year, just reminded me of that. But I mean, incredible play by Baylor. I don't know. What'd you guys think of the game overall? You kind of started with it, my bad. Yeah, go ahead.
Me or
whoever wants to talk about any game, just bring it back. I always forget that we haven't talked since last week, so I forgot that we haven't talked about the games. So whoever wants to talk about any of the games, that was just the first one that sticks out in my mind because right now, this hour, 6 days later, I don't know how he didn't score. Especially because it looked like even when they were going parallel, all he has to do is just dive. He just dives and he gets in. So it's crazy he didn't score. And then the other thing I'll remember for that game is I'm starting to think that Dave Aranda like is a robot. Like he's not like a real like I don't know if you saw his demeanor after the game or anything. The play happened. Well, first of all, it's the biggest play in Baylor history. It's his guys. He's a defensive guy, and he's just standing on the sideline like nothing's happening at all. They make the stop, and once again, just stoic, like nothing happened. And they dumped him with Gatorade, and once again, just stoic. So I'm starting to think that he's a guy that probably eats the same thing every single day. And like and now going back to them beating Oklahoma and that like him kicking the field goal because of the point differential, that would just make so much sense. He probably just wakes up and is like how many points do we have to score this week so that in 2 weeks if Oklahoma wins, then we'll show up by points differential. So I thought that was an awesome way to start the day. Is we'll get to, but I mean, as the day went on, the games got worse. But whoever wants to start about whatever game, go ahead.
I mean,
yeah,
I
thought it was a great play.
in.
Yeah, you go.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah.
We'll go to the SEC. Let's go to the SEC. So we'll go to the SEC guy. That obviously we need to get back to Matt and Notre Dame because once again, I apologize. I forget we haven't talked.
Yeah.
Well, we do talk we do talk through text, so I kind of get it mixed up. But that's me being old. I'm sorry. Keep going, Matthew.
The SEC championship game. It was interesting because I did something that I very rarely do, which was that I bet against Nick Saban. Something that I almost always want to laugh at because you always watch people and whenever they want something to be over, they always assume that it is. And so when people get tired of Nick Saban and they get tired of Alabama, suddenly every year they're jumping on and they're saying, oh, this is the year. It doesn't look as good. Nick Saban might never win a title again. And this year we had what looked like a weaker roster. I don't like really their offensive or their defensive coordinator that much at the moment. But they went in and did what everybody had discounted them and thought they couldn't do, which once again, we're left sitting here feeling stupid for thinking they couldn't because how many years in a row have they?
Yeah. Matt, what did you think about the game?
100% agree. Same thing for me. I never bet against Nick Saban, and that's why you don't bet against St. Nick.
So I'm going to let you guys know a little secret. The game started, and we'll go over our bets later. I have to find them in my notebook, but I think we were kind of all over the place. Matthew, I don't think you had a very good weekend last weekend. I think me and Matt were kind of like somewhere along the same one. I think we finished tied last week, so we'll get to that when we do it. But when the game started, like I obviously put the money from our picks on, but the game started, and I was just like, I had been thinking all day, I was like, why is Alabama not going to win this game? What is really true? Like Georgia's been really good, but let's be honest, the Clemson offense this year is god awful. And yes, they shellacked those bad SEC teams, which they still deserve a lot of credit for because Bama rarely does that. Even when they have those dominant seasons, they do it. And you even saw Alabama a week ago versus Auburn had basically one of the best drives from a freshman quarterback ever to beat their rival who was starting a backup quarterback, not only a backup quarterback, a bad backup quarterback, and a bad backup quarterback that was hurt. So I think we all kind of went into that like, yeah, this is finally when it's time to go down. But I will say I ended up putting up 2 parlays stupidly because I bet Bama money line and Pittsburgh money line. I was very confident about Pittsburgh. And then I did the dumb thing of including Iowa. That was dumb. That was just very dumb. But we'll talk about that. But yeah, I was just like, why aren't they going to lose the game? And I know people say Bama fatigue. I'm convinced that it was very real this year, and we'll get more into it with the Heisman thing as well. But I'm convinced it was very real this year. And going forward, you have to say they're the best team, but I'm also going to say that not having John Mechie is going to be a huge issue for them, especially in Matt. You can obviously talk more about this a little bit because you do like you're more into like the draft stuff. But Sauce Gardner is as good of a cornerback as there is in the college football, and I would say that I think right now is probably head and shoulders above the rest, considering we didn't really see Derek Stingley play this year. So I don't know what your thoughts on that, but Sauce Gardner is very, very good.
not only that, but we just saw with the awards yesterday, his corner on the other side is the best DB in the nation, won the award for the best DB in the nation. So they have two
we'll
very
get to
serious
as well, which we'll get to as well.
it,
I was I was looking at it this morning. I was like, did they mistype his name?
I mean, it's easy to get a lot of balls thrown towards you when the other side is Ahmad Gardner. So
someone tweeted about it, I think during the week or last weekend or Sunday or something. Ahmad Gardner's stats are so he has none. He has no stats because if you look, they just don't throw it to his side of the field. They just don't. And that's obviously, I think if he played in like the SEC, it would be different because you have to do that. But against teams like, like I don't know, SMU or Houston, the lower, higher level, but lower level teams, like they're just like, I'm not going to risk it. I'm not throwing it over to his side. So I looked at his stats and I was just like, there's nothing to even like go off of here because it was almost as if he didn't play this year. And I'm very excited to see him in match up against Alabama. I am very excited for the playoffs. But yes, I think John Mechie not having a problem. But I have to say, we'll get to this with the Heisman with you, Matthew. I've done a full 180. I know I've been out on Hayden Hutchinson, and I'm still out on Hayden Hutchinson. Will Fuller was an absolute animal this year, and I'm convinced the only reason he isn't the one that is at the Heisman ceremony other than Hayden Hutchinson is A, because Hayden Hutchinson had big moments. Rather, I still think they were cleanup sacks in big games, and B, because everyone wants to get behind, which you will soon find out I'm so against. Everyone wants to get behind Jim Harbaugh has finally broken through, and this was the guy that did it. Hayden Hutchinson, Will Anderson, I don't know why I say Will Fuller. Will Anderson's stats, they match up or are not better than guys like Chase Young and Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa and the dominant edge rushers we've seen. Hayden Hutchinson's don't really stack up at all. Other than the sacks, he really hasn't done much. And I think Ojabo is very underrated compared to Hayden Hutchinson. But Will Anderson has been an insane freak this year, and obviously you'll get your time to talk about him in the Heisman, but part of this podcast. But the Bama fatigue was definitely real this year. I think. I think people, and it's not wrong on them, but people just wanted to see a season where Bama wasn't that good, and we'll see if they are or not. But I was shocked that everyone was so shocked that it happened. And I think people started in the second half, people started kind of turning oh, this isn't that surprising. But they were the same people about a week ago that were saying there's no way in hell Bama even blocks Georgia up front. So it was very, very interesting afternoon. Like I said, the first two games were incredible storylines, mainly in the second one. But the first one was everything you asked for in a conference championship. And I also will put out on the picks, as far as going for the small conference championships, I don't know how you do it, Matt, but you're the only one that had any idea what was going on Saturday. I guess I haven't looked at yours, Matthew, that hard. It seemed like every time either I or me and Matthew picked something, you picked the other one, and you were it wasn't even like you were right. I think San Diego State lost by 50. Or one of those teams lost. You were just so right. I guess I just want how do you know that? How do you know all these small schools? Because
I love Group of 5 football. It's the best.
That's great. I love mid majors in basketball, but football, I have no idea about these teams, and they happen. I was Matt was right about all of them. So, all right. There's not much to talk about the Big Ten championship. I've said it for a while. When the Big Ten split up or expanded or whatever, when they split it into the East, well, first, I don't know if you guys remember when it was the division, it was the legends and the leaders, which was a whole mishap, and it was terrible. But when they split the conference in half, putting Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State all on one side, while geographically it kind of makes sense, it makes no sense for the bigger picture. Because every year it's Wisconsin or Iowa, and they just get blown out. I bet on Iowa, but I knew they were going to get killed. I wanted to say good job to Jim Harbaugh, but I think Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, obviously, all 4 of those teams walk in there and destroy Iowa on Saturday. So, Matthew, I'll start with you. You haven't talked in a while. What were your thoughts if you had any on it?
Yeah, I was embarrassed. I had taken Iowa plus the points. I think it was at 10.5. And I was embarrassed. It wasn't a great day. It was nice to see Michigan not have too big of a letdown. I think that was a word that I'd used when we were previewing that game. Even at the time, I was disgusted with myself for using that word. But going ahead, it keeps things interesting, sort of, in the playoff. I still think there's this resounding feeling that it's going to be Alabama versus Georgia anyways. But it is nice to feel like there's another team really capable of just destroying like inferior competition.
Yeah, I like I said, I think we're going to have a long time to talk about the playoffs before they come. So I don't want to get, I know I just said Bama fatigue. I don't want to get playoff fatigue before we can even, really get going on it. I personally, I think Michigan is outclassed by Alabama and Georgia. I think Alabama and Georgia are far superior teams. And I think Michigan defensively is still pretty good. I don't really trust their secondary. Once again, they haven't been tested all year. Their secondary hasn't. And in the Ohio State game, it snowed, so they weren't tested there. And when they were tested, they didn't look all that great. But then again, CJ Stroud didn't look all that great. So I am worried about that. But offensively, like I look at Hassan Haskins and I look at even if what's his name? The other guy.
Blake Corum?
Yes. Yeah. I look at those guys and whether it's still the SEC or what, like and as well as the Michigan Ohio offensive line played against Ohio State, I just don't think they have a chance. It's a horrible matchup because they have to run the ball to succeed. Like running the ball feeds their defense as well because they're always on the sideline and ready when they come out. So I just don't see them being able to get a running game going with like guys like Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean. I just think I think Michigan's been really good. Like I think they've been as good as maybe Ohio State was a couple of years, probably not last year, maybe the year before. But I just think that Alabama and Georgia are far and away better teams. But me and Matt kind of alluded to it. I don't know if you think so, Matt. But I do think Cincinnati could give Alabama some trouble going forward. But like I said, we can talk about that unless you have anything to add on that, Matt.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think with the Cincinnati-Bama game, Josh Jobe I think Josh Jobe's just as big of a miss right now as Mechie is. Mechie, I mean, the corners on Cincinnati are going to be able to give them trouble anyways, so that even helps more for Cincinnati's advantage. But Josh Jobe not playing is, I think, just as big of a miss for me in that game. I think it's going to be closer. What's the spread in that game?
I don't know. I haven't looked at.
I don't want to get.
I haven't looked at any of the spreads for any of the games because I don't want to like look at the Cincinnati Alabama spread and just be disappointed already. So I'll look at them as they come closer. And I will also say Desmond Ridder is like he's not going to be this great NFL quarterback, I don't think, but he's also not going to get rattled like by Alabama's front. Like Will Anderson, yeah, that's going to rattle anyone, but like. In the sense that I think, and obviously, once again, we'll have a month to talk about this as well. Coming into the Georgia-Michigan game, if you're Georgia, do you take this month off to get JT Daniels ready?
I would.
Matthew, you're more tuned in?
I don't like it. I still think Stetson Bennett has to be the option. I'm a little frustrated. With these teams, we saw it happen a lot with Florida. We saw it happening with Oklahoma. As soon as they're not getting the product that they want, you just want to unplug a guy and put in the next one and hope it works out better. But in reality, I don't see. I mean, if you go undefeated during the regular season with one guy and he struggles in one game against the greatest college football dynasty to have ever existed, I don't think you pull him out and just throw in the other guy who's been hurt and kind of given you results sometimes and kind of not. I'm also not a JT Daniels fan, so maybe that feeds into it. But I think if I'm trying to win games, then Stetson Bennett's my guy.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. If I was coach, I would probably stick with Stetson Bennett. But my issue is Georgia had never been in that position all year. And they've done a great job not being in that position, and hopefully they won't have to be in that position. I'm sure Matt will be right back. Hopefully they won't have to be in that position going forward. But trying to come back with trying to get scoring, it just didn't seem like Stetson Bennett was there. And I agree. I'm not a fan of JT Daniels. He's been at USC now and Georgia, and he's never really done anything of note, seriously, nothing of note, except just be JT Daniels. But there is that part of me that's he was a 5-star for a reason. That might be the edge Georgia needs to beat Alabama right now. But like I said, I think Alabama's injuries, and I think as we get closer to the games, people will start taking that into factor. Jamison Williams it's going to be hard to neutralize him, but I do think if anyone can do it, it will be Sauce Gardner. I do think he'll do a decent job of that. So not having Mechie is huge. And you said, Joba, I can't. In Joba, there's 5 Jobas in college football this year that just never happened. It's crazy. Also, way off side note, I don't know. You guys probably don't look at the recruiting rankings, but I peaked at 247's 2024, so I think they were just freshmen or they're sophomores now. There's and it's great. It's awesome. So many of the players, the defensive ends and the athletes and just basically all the players now, there's so many coming over from Africa. I've seen so many Zulu last names and just it's crazy, but I've never seen it that influxed before. And it's mostly in Texas, which makes sense, I guess. But it was very weird. So, but I don't know where I was going. So I think I was talking to you, Matt. So I'll let you take over.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. My stuff cut out for a second there, but
yeah, no worries. Yeah, no, you're good.
But yeah, I did want to backtrack to I had something to say about the JT Daniels thing. I think the best thing that they could have done was bring JT Daniels in last week's game. And if they got a spark going against that defense, they could have, gone into this, the playoffs with JT Daniels feeling good about their offense in a rematch with Bama, if the time comes to that, if it gets to that. But yeah, they didn't. They kept Bennett out there, so I feel like that was their decision right then. I don't think they'll go off of it now. If they were going to do it, I think they would have done it at some point in that game late.
All right, then. So I'll go forward and ask another question then. So it's not just the national championship anymore. Obviously, we have 2 games now. Say Stetson Bennett comes out and, he throws for, 180 yards, a touchdown, but 2 interceptions, takes some bad sacks. The game versus Michigan is closer than it should be, but Georgia still pulls it off. And then they go into playing an Alabama team that just hypothetically, let's say, just whooped Cincinnati 42-17. Then do you think hey, there's no way this, and then again, I guess you would have to imagine it's a low scoring Georgia game, which I anticipate anyway. But then do you say, you know what, we really have nothing to lose now. It's go for broke. We saw what Stetson Bennett was versus Alabama, and that's just not going to beat him this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit more of a fan of JT Daniels than you guys are. So I think JT Daniels gives them a way better chance to beat Alabama, and I've thought that since the beginning. I think everyone's kind of down on JT Daniels, and they were since week 1 because that 9-6 game against Clemson, but Clemson ended up having one of the best defenses in the nation. I mean, he was judged pretty harshly after 1 game against a really good defense.
Oh, God. I forgot about something that you just brought a smile on my face bringing up Clemson already. That's great. Matthew, go ahead. Because I tend to agree with you. The only thing I'm going to say is I think in a week leading up to the game, maybe longer, because it looks right now, if you're looking at that game, it looks so bad for Stetson Bennett. He did not play well. They couldn't come back. He threw some bad interceptions. So right now it looks terrible. But I wonder if in 2 weeks when people kind of not necessarily forget about the game, but cool down off things that they'll be well, he had a great season. I don't know what the answer is. And I don't think Kirby Bennett or Kirby Smart does either, which I think is a problem as a coach. But yeah, I really don't have. I would probably stick with Stetson Bennett, but I don't have any real reason to back that up other than he got you here, and we've seen that fail before. So, Matthew, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm somewhere. I agree with both of you guys on bits and pieces of it. I already kind of lined out earlier that I'm not the biggest JT Daniels fan. But then again, if we go back just a couple of years ago, if we're going to talk about Alabama and Georgia having rematches where backup quarterbacks have to get brought in, it's a very specific category, but there's a lot going on there. We saw the switch from Jalen to Tua, and then the switch from Tua to Jalen, and it'd be oddly poetic if something like that ended up happening. I think it'd make a great story. I don't know how likely that is.
And this has absolutely nothing to do with that for you guys, but I'm not going to start on my Ohio State hate spree yet, but thank God Georgia lost that game and Jake Fromm played incredibly well all that year, or Ohio State doesn't get Justin Fields. So, but I will say of all the playoffs we've had, that was probably the most entertaining, even though it only had 2 good games. Out of the 3, I guess, which is good, considering most of the first 4 matchups, basically since Ohio State beat Alabama the first year, have been pretty lopsided thanks to Washington, Michigan State, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma pretty much. So, and I think Ohio State was 4 again as well sometime. But, yeah, like I said, we obviously have a lot to go through once we get to that. So if you guys don't mind, or if you have something else to go ahead, let's get into a little bit of the coaching carousel and the transfer portal, which has become my favorite thing to talk about. Because I've cooled down from Matt thinking that you know everything because you've started leaking some stuff out that maybe it might not be finalized. So we'll see about that. But it's also just like gossip, and I love it. So unless one of you has a specific story you want to bring up, I'm going to start with the transfer portal, unless you guys don't want to. I think if Quinn Ewers goes to Texas Tech, I think I'm all in a Red Raiders fan. Like, have you seen what they're doing for it? It's basically making South Lake Carroll, where he went to high school, it's moving it a couple 100 miles to Lubbock. Like, they're bringing in his high school coach. I can almost guarantee you they're going to get some decommitments that come there because of him. And it just as a storyline, I mean, you guys can tell me if you disagree, especially for you guys as outsiders because you guys aren't Ohio State fans, but it is so much more interesting. It's going to be so much more interesting as long as he doesn't go to UT, which we'll see. But it would be so much more interesting to see Quinn Ewers for like 3 years at Texas Tech than at Ohio State. Like, just to me, that would be more like, it's going to be so much more fun to watch. Like, Texas Tech now becomes like a game that I want to watch on Saturdays. And I just think it's so much more interesting that he could and might, from what it looks like now, might possibly end up at Texas Tech. I don't know. What are you guys thoughts?
Yeah, I think it looks like that it's trending in that direction as well. They also went and got the OC on Western Kentucky, who has the best passing offense in the nation this year. So I think, I think it's trending in that direction for sure, and it's going to be a lot more entertaining to watch Tech games.
I agree. It's just, I think it's such a better storyline, and I think it's so funny. It would also be horrible for him, but also just hilarious if he really was just Tate Martell again. So that would be, I would feel very bad for him because Tate Martell, I'm not going to get down Tate Martell either. So stopping myself from sidetracking. Okay, we got to pick it up because I forgot you have to leave at 5 minutes. Let's move over to Matthew, one of your stories. And I won't start on my Ohio State yet. You think Eli Ricks might be in play for Florida?
I really do think so. If I could just line it up for a second. We just got this brand shiny new hire that everyone down here is very excited about. Corey Raymond coming over. He was the DB's coach for LSU. He was the lead guy in recruiting Grant Delpit, Jamal Adams, Derek Stingley, Eli Ricks. So a very good track record and a huge move just as far as the balance of the SEC. A guy like that coming to Florida, it means a lot on the recruiting trail. But even before we start worrying about that, before we're worrying about a cycle 2 years from now, before this year's cycle that'll come in next year, we could talk about Eli Ricks, who's in the portal right now, recruited by Corey Raymond. Obviously spent some time with him there. Now, I'm not going to claim to have the inside information. I don't know what their relationship looks like or
Matt,
anything
you got
like
any
that.
inside information on that one?
I don't. I didn't even know about Ohio State until you told us about it.
Go ahead, Matthew. Sorry. Just had to check with our insider.
Yeah, so I don't have much going on the information front, but everything I'm looking at says there's no reason Florida can't be in play here. So I'm hesitant on it, but now that we know he's not going to Ohio State, which I guess really just narrows him down to Alabama. There were two more teams he announced in the beginning that I don't really feel like are in it. Would you know those off the top of your head?
Yeah, USC, Georgia.
USC, Georgia.
USC and Georgia. Okay, yeah. So I think now with Ohio State out of the picture and Alabama's mainly the front runner, Florida could be a new competitor.
Okay, no, that all makes a lot of sense. I agree. And Matt, I'll go to you in a sec, but it was always weird when Ricks hit the portal because I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, maybe even last week or 2 weeks ago, but LSU and Ohio State too, not to bring up Ohio State, but LSU is you commit to the school. You don't commit to the coaching staff, like you commit to the school. So him kind of pulling out after they got what should be a great coach and things. I understand it. Like, don't get me wrong. I think, and if you can do it, definitely do it. I understand it. I think it was a little bit weird. And I went back into looking into his recruiting, and I would probably say right now, USC is off the picture as well. USC is out of the picture as well. Matt, you're shaking your head.
I still think USC is a very viable option for him. I don't know. That's his home.
But have you seen what he said about it? Have you seen what you said about his home? Like he says he said now USC would have a great chance if they decided to go with that Monty, the interim coach, long term, because apparently he was the first one to ever offer Ricks. So that might have played something, but he didn't like USC when he lived in Southern California. He wanted to get out of there. I just think USC, and with Lincoln Riley being there and him being because I can guarantee you Lincoln Riley out there, I got to tell you, it was a great move for him too as well, because he's not really thinking about defense right now, because his big goal this year is probably get the team A, respectable again, but B, get fans back in the stadium. Because we've seen the Rose Bowl the past couple of weeks in LA and all those places, and the past couple of years they're empty. So I think that's going to be his biggest thing. I agree with you, Matthew, with Alabama. I think is the top front. I have no idea why all these guys just don't go to Georgia. I don't know why, and I do think Georgia, if they do end up winning the national title, and if he doesn't choose before then, could be playing a major factor. I mean, he just came out of probably the best cornerback duo in the country with him and Derek Stingley. He could walk right into the next one at Georgia with Kelee Ringo. So I agree with you, but the more I guess I talk about it, the more I don't really have any idea, because which I'll wait to get on my Ohio State thing, but it seemed like he really wanted to go to Ohio State. Like he was almost locked in there. But they turned him away for whatever reason. So I don't know what he's doing. So I'm confused. But Florida seemed – I agree. I don't know why Florida isn't an option. I don't know why these guys don't go out and visit all the schools. Just visit all of them. Go on 2 weeks and visit all of them. Just say you're there for an official visit. I don't understand it. But they also have to, work out and adhere to schedules, unlike me. So, all right, transfer portal news. Rattler. Who's got news on Rattler?
All I know right now is he's 100% predicted right now in the crystal ball to UCLA, but who knows how much Chip Kelly has to do with that and if he goes to Oregon. So right now it's probably pretty much up in the air right now with him. I still don't really have much.
Yeah. Because I do want to hop over to coaches. You guys probably don't even pay attention to it, but last year, obviously, the FCS had the season in spring. So I told you guys, I extensively covered that. One of their best players last year, Incarnate Ward's Cam Ward. He won he ended up coming back this year. He won the Jerry Rice Award. 6'3", dual threat quarterback. He is very, very, very good. he entered the transfer portal. He's got 3 years left. I do think it'll be interesting to see where he ends up because I think he is going to be your first kind of test case for an exceptional FCS player that tries to float his name around. Because I haven't really looked into it, but I would think he's going to try and, float around the Virginia Techs, like the almost big level schools. But I just think it's going to be interesting where he ends up because I think it's going to really put out how FBS coaches view FCS competition, in my opinion. But that's more for me anyways. Unless you guys got anywhere else in the transfer portal, Adrian Martinez is still out there. I no idea with him. But let's hop over to coaches. Is it a bad look for Oregon to bring back Chip Kelly? Either one of you can start.
It's not the best look. I'll say that much.
when the news came out that they wanted permission to talk to him, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like Oregon's going back to Chip Kelly. Like, that's going to be great. And the more I've thought about it, I'm like, wait, that means since 2007, Oregon has not gotten any better or like a bigger program. And if you look at it, it's kind of just what it is. Mario Cristobal just left from Miami. Granted, he has Miami ties. It's the second coach to move east from Oregon just because Oregon's not a prime spot. Your thoughts on Chip Kelly, Matt? And does no one just want to go to Oregon?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about it. I don't think it's a great fit to bring him back. I don't know. Kind of indifferent about it.
Okay, great. What would you like to – we haven't heard you talk a lot, Matt. What would you like to break bread about? What do you want to talk about? What's on your mind, the biggest thing?
I think Brent Venables is going to be a superb hire. I don't know if I'd say it's the best hire of the coaching carousel, but I think he's going to be fantastic, especially for the transition into the SEC for Oklahoma. I forget who it is that he just hired as the OC, but Levy. He was, I guess, he was a big part in getting guys like receivers, quarterbacks. So he should be able to handle a lot of the offensive recruits. Brent Venables will focus on more defensive recruits like he did his whole time at Clemson. We know how many guys they brought in. So I think that's going to be a great fit for Oklahoma. I think they'll stay almost right where they were, except become a little more defensive.
What about you, Matthew? What do you think of the Venables hire?
I'm interested. I think it's definitely a good move. I don't know that it's the greatest. And my stance on the program, and I'll actually kind of tie in too with this between Oklahoma and with Clemson, is they're both schools that about like a month and a half ago, on Twitter and on Instagram, the alarm bells were ringing and everyone was thinking that these programs are over, they're done for. I've already talked a little bit about this analogy in the past 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I did not really believe them. I said, hey, Clemson's going to be fine. Oklahoma's going to be fine. And I'm looking now, and over the past probably about week or so, I'm a little more concerned about both of the programs. We don't know where Dabo could be headed, but even if he stays, obviously Venables is gone. Tony Elliott's going to be gone. And I'm a little worried for both these teams. I think Oklahoma definitely took a really big hit with Lincoln Riley leaving. And I think there's probably going to be a year or two of recovery before we really get to see Brent Venables at Oklahoma doing what he's hired to do right now.
Did Tony Elliott take the Virginia job?
This morning, yeah.
Okay. I thought I saw his name trending last night. So I'm in between both of you guys. I like Matthew. You kind of seem more skeptical. Matt, you like it. I like the hire. I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, like going to the SEC, Oklahoma, like they just can't go in as this slap happy offensive team. Like they're going to get smacked around. So I think I said it at the time, it's a good time. If you're ever going to rebrand your program, it's a great time to do it. And hiring Venables is the first step in that. Now I do question, yes, Venables was a great defense coordinator and by all accounts has been a great defense coordinator. How many of those players did he get by himself, really because of him? Or how many were listening to Dabo Swinney talk about having sex with The Rock? So I do think it's going to – obviously not – you guys aren't fun. Come on, laugh. God.
I'm trying to figure out if there was something I missed.
No, I hate Clemson. Everything I say about Clemson is probably untrue, but in my head it's true, and I hope it all comes true. So I do think it's a good hire. I just do I do wonder, especially with all the decommitments that came out from Oklahoma just because of Lincoln Riley, I do wonder what kind of players they're going to be able to pull in the first 2 or 3 years. Because I do think down the line, SEC defensive linemen are going to want to play in the SEC. It doesn't really matter. And now that Oklahoma's in that group, I think going forward that like I don't know who said it. Maybe I don't know why I keep bringing up Andy Staples on these podcasts, but he said it a couple of weeks ago. Like the defensive linemen, these elite defensive linemen from Mississippi and Florida and Georgia, like they would rather go to Mississippi State or Arkansas than go play for a national championship Oklahoma just because there's no defense. So I do think that's going to play a major factor, and I think it's the right move. I think they've taken the correct first step. But we'll see where it goes. I hope Jeff, like all these nice things have been said about Levy. We'll see. A lot of it, I think, because he was the OC at Ole Miss, right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Or was he at UC? Whatever. He has some connection to Lane. So whenever I think of an offensive coach and Lane, I just think maybe it was probably more Lane. So we'll see. Now on to, my two favorite things to talk about right now. Clemson. I don't know if you knew where Dabo Swinney was last Sunday. Did any of you know? Do you guys go on social media at all?
I definitely heard about this, and I'm blanking on it now.
I have a feeling of what it is. He was on the sideline at the Raiders game with the other, not Jerry Jones, Mark Davis, the owner. And this is just such a Dabo move. And I've said this all along, and you guys maybe not want to back me up because I've said a lot of bad things about Dabo, but this is such a Dabo move. Both of his coordinators leave, and he bolts for the NFL. I don't know if it makes sense. First of all, he makes absolutely no sense in Las Vegas. After everything that's happened, well, maybe they want to rebrand too and like be all God and holy. Although I don't think that's going to work in Vegas. So I don't think the fit is there. However, it would make me very excited. And I also would think it would bring up who then gets the Clemson job. Like, because I not only now, like, and I know I said it's a whole Dabo thing. It would be even more Dabo because now everyone's set. And in like 2 weeks, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to the Raiders. Like, you guys have to find it out. Like, without me, like everyone's set in their place." And personally, if you put up Oklahoma, Clemson, and USC, I think Clemson's the worst coaching spot, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's the ACC. You have to fight. You basically have to fight with the SEC for all of your recruits, and they just don't want to play in the ACC. So I guess I asked the question: how much would it be? I mean, you don't have to answer this because I know you guys will be excited for me. How awesome will it be if Dabo Swinney goes to Vegas? And who in your mind? I guess the first person that comes to your mind who would step up to maybe take that job? Because I have one.
The first thought I have about Dabo to Vegas is all I know is Mike Mayock with Vegas has been drafting Clemson players like every single draft.
That is so true.
And the fact that Deshaun Watson is about to be available for trade, something tells me if they brought in Dabo, the first thing Dabo would want to do is make a massive trade to get Deshaun Watson as his quarterback. But I'm not sure about a replacement. I'm going to have to sit here and think about it because I don't know if that job is even going to be – I don't think any coaches that were hired would then want to like rethink and get another job or like, flip and go to kind of like Cliff Kingsbury did with, taking an OC job and then leaving right away for Arizona. I don't think there's anybody that's really going to want to do that for a Clemson job.
Yeah, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm with Matt here. I'm actually having a really hard time finding someone to fill that spot because I think
you guys are missing the obvious.
You're not thinking like Urban Meyer, are you?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer is 100% getting fired by the Jaguars. How great would it be to see go to Clemson? All right. Obviously, it's not very realistic, but in the back of my head, there's a part of me that knows Urban Meyer is just so like self-absorbed a lot. I mean, he's a great human being apparently with his family and everything, but he's self-absorbed in his own image that he would not be able to take like getting fired after one NFL season. And then like he would want to go back to coaching, but he wouldn't like take a Purdue job. So he just hops right on Clemson. But you can go ahead, Matthew. Sorry.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought. I'll say with Clemson, it seems like the commodities themselves are much more valuable. And something that I forgot to touch on when we were talking Venables is the benefit of somebody in the SEC who has experience navigating Bama. The Clemson system was essentially designed to beat Bama, and now Oklahoma goes into the SEC with a piece of that. So maybe now that we're talking about this vacancy, if we want to flip that and say, hey, if Clemson wants to compete in the playoff, they're going through Bama, who do we have who really has that experience? And unfortunately, there aren't really a lot of guys with wins over Saban who are looking for a job right now. But I think that's almost the first thing that they're thinking. You can tell that it stays on the mind of the Clemson administration. It's always about beating Bama. So I think that's a priority here.
All right. So I said I was good at the hosting thing in the beginning. I mismanaged time. I know you only have 10 minutes left. We will do the Heisman and the awards at the beginning of next week's because there's still more to talk about. But we will do it next week so we have a full thing for it. I'm sorry I mismanaged time, but we had a lot to talk about. So I do want to keep going for 10 more minutes, but I still think we have a lot to talk about. So as long as that's cool with you guys, I just think everyone then just gets to talk about it. And then we can all kind of react to, I mean, we all think Bryce Young's going to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we can all kind of react to that there. But I do think it's interesting what you say, like, it goes back to the whole Bama being once again number one. Like you almost thought that now, like the whole, I almost look at it like the whole basically like 2010 up until almost like maybe when Clemson won their second national championship, every team's goal was to find a way, like every top team's goal, like the elites, like Ohio State, Notre Dame, all those guys were like, okay, we know we can beat our conference. We know we can do it. But when we get to the level, how do we have to beat Saban? And now, like, you thought it might have been over. It might have been Clemson now. Like, now we're going into another decade where it's looking like the path to the most glory, whatever, per se, is once again going through Alabama, which always then makes me bring up how crazy it was. And it's not that crazy, and it just shows how good of a coach Nick Saban is, that Alabama was basically partially non-existent from like 2000 to 2007. Like they were just bad. Like John Parker Wilson, like they weren't very good. I remember they lost to, I think it was like they weren't even ranked at the beginning of the season, but I think they lost to like UAB or like someone like that, like the first game of the season. And so it's just crazy to me. And I do think that like, if you look at the hires, like I think like that's funny that you bring that up, but like Oklahoma, yes, they have a piece of how to beat Bama. That's huge. Like you can look at the other elites, like Georgia doesn't have a piece that knows how to beat Bama yet because well, we know why, but I mean even Florida's had it with like the Tebows over the while and everything. So I just think it's crazy. We're going to go into another decade that we're just still like looking up at Alabama, and I won't. Well, and it also just sucks that it also just sucks. And I don't know how NFL fans you guys are. It also sucks that we're also going into the next decade somehow still looking up at the New England Patriots. It is. I hate no city more than I hate Boston and Boston sports teams. if they win like 5 more Super Bowls in this decade, I don't know if I'll survive. Like, I can't deal with it. I don't want to do it. Like, Alabama is cool. Like, they have different athletes every year, whatever. And now the fact that it's now an Alabama quarterback leading it's like kicking you when you're down. It's just me. So
I'm right there with you.
Well, listen, I appreciate the take. I'm not going to sit here and let you slander John Parker Wilson.
His brother was better.
I don't care. Listen, I lived in Tuscaloosa when John Parker Wilson was the quarterback there, just, a little kid back then. And I used to go and I would bring a picture of John Parker Wilson when I went and got my haircut because that was the haircut I wanted. So I'm not going to sit here and let you talk poorly about him.
Oh wow! I gotta find the John Parker Wilson haircut. I know what it looks like, but no. Were you also then hanging around the Hoover High School looking for Rush Probst too?
No, we were just sitting around waiting on Rich Rodriguez. Really?
No, that's funny because that whole Hoover. I can't remember what the show was called. It like came up when I was like in 7th and 8th grade, and I loved it. And it was I just remember his brother was the baseball player. But no, I do remember John Parker Wilson. But it is crazy to think that they've gone now over 15 years where they have been, without a doubt, the top program in college football after a brief period of 7 years. Like I just told, like they would come into the season not ranked, which is absolutely asinine to think about right now. Like if Alabama lost 40 players from this year, I still think they would be in the top 10 next year. So. I'm happy that we got that story. I'm happy that we moved that because we got that story. But this is really all about me. This podcast is about me. So what I need to get into, unless you guys have, no, I'm just kidding. But obviously, I want to get into Ohio State. Unless you guys have any other takes regarding transfer portal, anything, even the awards last night, anything. Oh, I do have a video. So did you guys watch the Sunday or the Thursday night game last night at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you hear about the Chase Claypool thing?
Yeah, I saw it. I was watching.
So I have the video, and I just want you guys to watch it. And I don't want, after I'm done talking, don't say anything. What's the first thing that comes to your head when you watch this? Not like stupidity or anything like that. Like what's the first thing that comes to your head? Because mine was very clear when it happened. And it's no excuse, but it.
Pass caught by Claypool, first down, clock running. And it may come up and clock it now. There he goes. They got it now. The balls, they can't get the ball to the official. He's trying to scramble to get it set. And that stops the.
Yeah, I don't know what his little freak out at the end was there, but he's a weirdo. But what was your guys' first thought?
That he's celebrating a 6-yard completion?
Okay, so it's hard to put this in context, but once I say it, you'll agree. And it's no excuse. He's 2 years out of college. My immediate thought was he thought the clock stops on a first down.
Yeah, probably.
Which, like I said, is no excuse considering you were at USC 2 years ago, man. You've been playing in the NFL. But I remember, obviously he deserves to get destroyed for that. But I remember watching it, I was like, oh, he just thought the clock stopped. He just thought the clock 100% stopped on the first down. I think
Juju's rubbing off on the rest of the receivers.
I'm not going to get into NFL because I still want to talk about Ohio State and how mad I am at them. I disagree with that take, and I'm a Browns fan. Chase Claypool is what everyone thinks Juju is. Juju did the dancing on the field, but he's overall not like a locker room problem and things like that. Chase Claypool is. And, I mean, don't drag me down this rabbit hole, Matt. I could talk about the Steelers sucking for days. I had 20 years of my life where they were like Super Bowl champions every year, and then the Patriots would win. Don't bring up my memories, my bad memories, my nightmares. So I want to get to Ohio State, and I obviously didn't send it, or I might have sent it to you guys. I don't know. I wrote an article the other day for my one site called Flurry Sports. I titled it Ryan Day's walking on thin ice. And you guys feel free to disagree with me. That's really fine. But as more of college football fans, I kind of want to hear your perspective. I basically went through it, and obviously I got destroyed on Twitter and destroyed online, and that's fine. I got destroyed again today for a Cavs article about nothing. It's comical at this point. But the whole string of events of what's happening with Ohio State. So CJ Stroud has a great year. Let's look back. How many 3,000-yard receivers have ever played on the same team before? 6. They were all like small schools like Texas Tech in the early 2000s. So you could say all you want about CJ Stroud being great this year. He really wasn't that great. Ohio State had 2 losable games this year, and they lost both of them convincingly. And CJ Stroud did not play well in either game. Those 3 receivers deserve more credit than anyone else, in which I thought, and we'll talk about next week, the Blitnikoff last night was a joke. I like Jordan Addison. It was a joke. The fact that some of the other big names weren't there. I did not understand some of the finalists for the awards. And then I understand that with the situation with Quinn Ewers, like not a lot you can do. Like he wants to transfer, you let him transfer, whatever. But you could have at least told him, and I don't know why Ryan Day isn't thinking this. If this guy's the best recruit ever, like why not say you can compete for the job next year? So whatever. And then he just lets him walk. So I'm mad about that. And I'm quicking this up. Sorry. And then the whole Eli Ricks situation, you both watched the defense play this year. It was horrible. And it wasn't the DB. It wasn't all the DBs. It wasn't all the defensive linemen. It was a horrible mess. And you have the chance to almost basically lock in 2023 top 10, maybe top 5 pick, and you turn them away because some of the other defensive backs. Matthew, you can go if you want. I see you look at the door. And you turn because your younger defensive backs say they'll transfer. Like, who cares? You sucked last year. Like, I'll bring in the number 1 corner in the 2023 NFL draft. So, quickly, your thoughts on it. I just and the amount of responses I got was like, "What do you mean? He's won? He got to the championship last year. He was handed a program that was on the precipice of Alabama." Thoughts?
It's the second year in a row that he didn't make the Big Ten championship game, as far as I'm concerned. So we could start there. Besides that, I've got to get out of here.
He made the Big Ten championship.
I know he was in it, but he did not earn.
Oh, got you. Got
where I'm
okay.
going with this.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew.
So I got to get out of here. I just want to say, scared money don't make money. Y'all are going to ask me who muffs the punt this week. It's got to be the awards voters. Will Anderson should have won everything they gave out. So I'll see y'all soon.
See it.
So I'll come back to you a little bit. Sorry, but I've been fired up about this, and I just wanted to talk to just like a college football fan about it because, like, fundamentally, it doesn't make sense to me. And I actually ended up tweeting, I'm still not friends with him, but I talked. My high school basketball coach, who was one of my football coaches as well, and I asked him, I was like, as like a coach and a program, like, does the guys the guys in your program saying that they'll transfer, like, does that make a decision? And he was like it factors into it. But when you have the opportunity to bring in a guy as good as Eli Ricks, like, you do it. Like, you don't care what happens about it. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I was looking for the quote actually while Matt was talking. My buddy was just telling me last night. I can't remember the exact quote. Jimbo Fisher said something though about Ryan Day basically getting handed a golden ticket at Ohio State. And I couldn't find it. But
Jim Harbaugh. No, it was Jim Harbaugh who said it to him.
Oh, it was Jim Harbaugh.
Jim Harbaugh said after I just said it a minute ago. That's probably why he thought of it. He was born on third base.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Jim Harbaugh, after the Ohio State-Michigan game, was like, oh, well, some people were born on third base. And, yeah, I mean, it's 100% true. He was handed a top 3 program in the country with – and if you look at Ryan Day, his background isn't that extensive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I'm kind of with you. And that's crazy because I think he's probably going to be a front runner for the Bears job. And I don't think it will work out great. So and then I guess my other thing about Ohio State is right now is the 2 hottest coaches in the country and probably the 2 front runners for Coach of the Year again next year are Marcus Freeman and Luke Fickell. How did they let them get out of the Ohio State ranks? Yeah,
I don't know how Marcus Freeman. I think he was a coach there for briefly, and then he kind of did his own thing. So good for him. But Luke Fickell, and I understand that Luke Fickell had the job for a year, and then Urban Meyer was going to come in, so you can't say no to that. But you have to keep something in talks with him. Like, okay, when Urban leaves, dude, you got to come back, because I just think more and more looking at it, Ryan Day's play calling this year was not very good. I hope he takes the Bears job. I really do. I at this point, though, it's almost like it's different from Clemson, in my opinion, because Ohio State is one of the best jobs in the country.
Yeah. I think they'll be able to get Luke Fickell back if Ryan Day does jump ship. So
you think so? See, I think I only think that if Cincinnati gets somewhat embarrassed in the playoff, he seems like I really thought I think Notre Dame did a great job getting Marcus Freeman, obviously, but I thought for sure he was headed to Notre Dame. I thought for sure he was going to Notre Dame because that made sense. He seems like a family guy and like a Midwestern guy. So I just don't know if he, after building this program in Ohio State's shadow for, 8 years now, and they finally just made the playoffs, and as long as they don't get embarrassed, or even if they do, who really cares? You made the playoffs and Ohio State didn't. So I don't know if it's maybe an overlooking thing, like he looks at them as disrespecting him. I doubt that, but yeah, I do have a good feeling they would be able to pull Luke Fickell back, but yeah, I don't know. And we never really got your thoughts on nothing really on them just missing out. Just kind of after having the upset, it just kind of it didn't play out the right way. Like you needed.
It sucks that they, my hopes were up because that Baylor upset, and it was like a crazy game, came down to literally inches or an inch. And they pulled that out, and then just to get, Georgia goes up 10-0. I'm like, we're going to make it. And then all of a sudden, nope.
That's
there goes Bryce Young up and down the field.
And that's the other thing that people have forgotten about this. Like Georgia was up 10-0 granted for a brief period, but they were up 10-0. So yeah, that had to be brutal, especially just the way it happened. Like, oh my God, it's open. Like the door is open, and then just Nick Saban killing everyone's dreams.
And then me miserably having to watch Michigan beat the hell out of Iowa, just praying that somehow Iowa could beat them. And then somehow I make it.
Yeah, I forgot that. Well, I got to tell you, man, if you would ask me, I would have been like, not much hope for this one, man.
I knew there wasn't much hope. I was the only one who picked Michigan. With the
you got all out of your picks right. So next week we'll obviously do the awards. We'll do our full bowl preview kind of thing. Probably be a little bit longer of a show, and then we'll obviously talk about everything else that we need to get in. And I don't know. I thought I was going to say something, but I don't know what I was going to say. So we'll get our awards bowls all in next week. We'll all be back hopefully Friday, unless we change it. But hopefully Friday, hopefully noon. But you never know. Have a good weekend, Matt. Any last words?
Yeah, you do the same. No college football, so I mean, hopefully I gotta get a negative test back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old now, and I was talking to a couple of my buddies, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do this weekend. There's no college football. I've tried to switch over to college basketball, but it's just not the same. But
well, this came at the worst time too, because now I'm until I get my test, I'm kind of just stuck at home. So now I have no college football and I'm stuck at home. Like, what do I do? I don't know.
There's some bad basketball games on tonight, I think, but you could always turn those on. But hopefully you don't get COVID. Also, I'm sure we'll be checking in. But everyone else have a good weekend, Matt. You as well. We will see you guys next week. Let's rock.